St. Louis Olympics, 1904, the most ridiculous marathon in history. The winner drove 11 miles in a car. The runner-up was drugged with rat poison by his own trainer. Another guy was chased a mile off course by wild dogs. Only 14 of the 32 starters finished. The course was so bad, it almost killed everyone. This is not a joke. This is the Olympics American style. Smash like if you've never heard of the worst race ever run. 1904. St. Louis, Missouri. The Olympics are tacked onto the World's Fair like an afterthought, and the marathon is set to be the main event. What the athletes didn't know was that they were about to run 24.85 miles of pure hell. The course featured 7 hills and cracked dirt roads that turned to a fine powder under the runners' feet. To make matters worse, it was 100 degrees Fahrenheit with 90% humidity. And get this, there was only one water station at the 12-mile mark. Why? Because the race organizers wanted to test a crazy idea called the deliberate dehydration theory. They genuinely believed that not giving athletes water would somehow make them stronger. Meanwhile, cars drove alongside the runners, kicking up dust clouds so thick that the athletes couldn't breathe. Spoiler alert, the dehydration experiment didn't make anyone stronger. It almost killed everyone. Let's start with the first-place finisher, or should I say, the first-place cheater, American Fred Lors. Fred was a bricklayer from New York, and by mile 9, he was cramping up badly. He just couldn't go on. Seeing his runner struggling, his manager pulled up in their car and offered him a ride. So Fred hopped in. For the next 11 miles, he sat back and relaxed, waving to spectators and fellow runners as he drove by, like he was the grand marshal of a parade. It was a nice little joyride until the car broke down at mile 20. Feeling refreshed, Fred decided, "Hey, what the heck," and jogged the last 5 miles. He crossed the finish line first. The crowd went absolutely wild, and he was about to be awarded the gold medal by Alice Roosevelt, the president's daughter. But just as she placed the medal around his neck, someone in the crowd screamed, "He drove. He cheated." When confronted, Lors just laughed it off and claimed the whole thing was a practical joke. The officials didn't find it very funny and banned him for life. But this story gets weirder. The ban was quietly lifted just a year later, and Fred Lors went on to win the 1905 Boston Marathon, this time for real. With Lors disqualified, the gold medal went to the real American favorite, Thomas Hicks. But his story is even more insane. Hicks's trainers were all in on the water is for losers theory. So instead of giving him water, they gave him a special cocktail. The ingredients? Strychnine, yes, literal rat poison, which was used as a stimulant in tiny, and I mean tiny, doses back then. They mixed that with raw egg whites and a good swig of brandy. By mile 20, Hicks was completely out of it. He was hallucinating, his legs felt like lead, and he was begging for water. His trainers refused. Instead, they literally carried him across the finish line while his legs moved in a running motion. He was a human puppet. Doctors on the scene said he would have died on the spot without immediate medical treatment. Even after all that, he was declared the winner. To his credit, Hicks initially refused the medal, knowing he had been carried for part of the race. But eventually, he accepted it. But the circus doesn't end there. Oh no. The rest of the field was a collection of bizarre stories. There was Anderin Carvajal, a Cuban postman who had hitchhiked his way to St. Louis. He showed up to the race in his street clothes and heavy dress shoes. A fellow athlete took pity on him and used a knife to cut the soles off his shoes to make them lighter. During the race, Carvajal got hungry. He stopped to chat with some spectators, then wandered into an orchard and started eating some apples he found on the ground. Unfortunately, they were rotten. He got crippling stomach cramps and had to take a nap on the side of the road. Incredibly, he woke up and still managed to finish in fourth place. Then there were the two South African runners, Len Tonyan and Jan Mashiane. They were the first black African athletes to ever compete in the Olympics. Partway through the race, they were chased a full mile off course by a pack of aggressive dogs. They still managed to finish 9th and 12th. Meanwhile, American runner William Garcia was found unconscious in a ditch, nearly dead from the dust he'd inhaled. He had internal bleeding and was lucky to survive. Out of the 32 runners who started, 18 either dropped out or had to be carried off the course. The aftermath was a mess. James Sullivan, the race organizer who came up with the dehydration experiment, somehow had the nerve to call it the most difficult marathon ever run, as if that was something to be proud of. The event was such a disaster that it almost got the marathon permanently removed from the Olympics. But there was a silver lining. This race from hell led to the creation of modern marathon rules. Water stations are now required every few kilometers. Cars are not allowed on the course, and you definitely can't carry a runner across the finish line. As for Thomas Hicks, he never ran competitively again. He said the race completely broke him physically and mentally. The 1904 St. Louis Marathon remains the only Olympic race in history where the winner was drugged, driven, or chased by dogs. Let's just do a rapid-fire round of the most insane facts from this race. There was only one water station, and that was on purpose to test human limits. The first two African athletes in Olympic history had to outrun wild dogs. Thomas Hicks lost 10 pounds during the race. The course was so dusty that some runners had to wear goggles just to see. And Fred Lors, the guy who drove 11 miles, later became a beloved figure in the running community. People eventually decided his little joke was hilarious. 1904 St. Louis, the Olympics so bad it almost killed the marathon forever. Rat poison, car rides, wild dogs, dehydration experiments. This actually happened in America. Which part shocked you the most? Fred's car ride? Hicks on rat poison? Comment below. I read every single one. If this blew your mind, smash subscribe